It came from...
This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. If you find these answers useful, give us a like wherever you're at to help other people find this content. First one is something I find really interesting, fascinating here. This one is by Jack WM on the user experience subreddit. Is it ethical to accept a job offer for a betting company? They go on to write, I've been job hunting for a while, getting to the final interviews, but rejected at the last minute. A sports betting company that I won't name is offering me a UX job with great pay and benefits, but some of my friends think it's shameful to be trying to improve the user experience for gamblers. I'm on the fence. On one hand, a job's a job. On the other hand, I don't want to be a part of the problem. The company themselves says they empower in-control gamblers to entertain themselves and that people are responsible for their own decisions, but problem gambling is still a significant problem and not going anywhere, especially with online gambling growth. I could really use some advice about this and would love to have a discussion about it if it's the right thing to do or not. What are your thoughts? Barry, I want to expand this to, beyond gambling. I want to talk about sort of the ethics of designing for dark patterns and like what would happen if you were instructed to design a dark pattern. So I'm going to let you take this one away.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think from a purely professional perspective, there is some really cool stuff here. There's the opportunity to get into some real culture, behavior sort of elements, and there's going to be some really, depending on what the UX that they're trying to get you to create with, like say, it's not even just gambling. If you're into, like say, you mentioned dark patterns, but then there is also, there's like the sex industry has loads of websites that all require UX design and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the one hand, you've got things that, and it's all about perception as well, because they say that their friends, I think it's shameful, but actually there's a vast majority of people in this sort of who engage with gambling websites, gambling things, who don't have a problem, who enjoy it. It's their thing. There is a subset of society that does find it a problem. People gamble on anything. So yeah, I've got no real thought in this, because you could say, I work in the defense industry. Part of what we do in the defense industry is we talk about things like lethality and stuff like that on a like applying kinetic effect, which is all buzzwords for, well, killing people and stopping other people from killing what we consider the good guys and that type of thing, which you could talk about the morals and ethics of that type of thing. And I regularly do whenever we interview somebody. I have that discussion with them, because it's it's not your run-of-the-mill type of job. So I think you've got to be perfectly clear with yourself about how you feel about working in this sort of arena. The job will get done. Somebody will pick up that job regardless. It's like most things. The jobs, somebody will do the job. So I guess the battle you've got is it something that you're happy to do, or is it something that you're not? And if you're not happy to do it, or you feel embarrassed to admit what you do to in your friendship group or whatever, then maybe it isn't the job for you. Maybe it is something that you should be moving on from and going somewhere else. But yeah, I think it's all about whether you can solve it within your own conscience. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm along the same lines, right? So I worked in the defense industry for a while, and I was very clear with my employer and the contractors that I was working on that I would not work on anything that would help take the life of another human being. Like I made that abundantly clear, and that was one of my conditions on being hired, right? Is I don't want to work on anything that will help take the life of another person. And so the stuff that I worked on was very much defense focused. Like it was very much protection. Protecting our soldiers from other things, our warfighters. And so it was one of those things where I could be proud of the work that I was doing, because it was I'm trying to be careful about what I say here. it was in service of protecting. Now, I did work on Intel systems, and so you might then say, well, the more Intel we have, the better decisions that we can make about that. And when it comes to that, it's like, well, if you gather enough information, you can reduce the amount of collateral damage. And so it's like it is a really challenging game of how you rationalize things in your head. Ultimately, I got out of the defense industry because I couldn't handle grappling with that stuff anymore, right? And so I think it is an interesting question to ask yourself. Now, the fact that you're asking this to begin with, I think makes you very qualified for the job, because if you're in that position, then you might say, okay, well, you kind of have the ultimate authority of how it would impact these people. Like, do you want to design it easier to use, or do you introduce ease in some aspects, like maybe ease of getting your money, but then difficulty in sort of placing the bets, because you have to go through all these, I understand the risk associated with this. Gambling is a risk. I understand, so there are different ways in which you as a UX designer can help protect people. And I think in these situations where you might have these behaviors that might be susceptible for certain humans, right? Like gambling addiction or something like that, you might rationalize it by saying, well, I can put in checks to say I've put in things that will help it to be less likely that addicts will gamble, but more likely that non-addicts will gamble. And you have to do that research. I don't know. It's not my domain, but that's something that you could do as somebody in a UX position, right? It is all a gamble.
See what you did there.
Thanks.
Yeah. that was good. I mean, the fact that, like I say, the fact that they're asking the question in the first place, actually puts you in a really good position, because it means that you're actually thinking about it in that way. Because again, like I said, when I ask people in interviews if I turn around and say, look, are you happy with this sort of world, this idea that the effect you could have on lethality, the fact what you're doing could end up killing people one way or another. If they just turn around and say, yeah, of course, that's not a problem, that's also a bit of a trigger, because I don't think you should be you shouldn't be entirely comfortable with it, because of the nature of what it is. So if you're almost too blasé, but if you're also too hung up, there's a sweet spot about making sure you've always got that thing in the back of your head going, is that right? Is that the right thing to be doing? Yeah, it's a interesting position.
I agree.